Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video, and we are going to be breaking down the Balanced Druid for Midnight Season 2 and what it is you need to be looking to do in order to have success with this specialization. It is a lot better than Season 1 when it comes to damage and utility, although its defense can still be a little shaky at times. So we're going to be doing a solo shuffle lobby against multiple melee DPS and giving you the rundown of what to do in this scenario, as this is the most common sticking point for most Balanced Druids, where they struggle the most. So my strategy in this type of lobby is to kind of stay at a distance and maximize my damage while positioning the melee away from their enemy healer. So we start off with Trent's Incarnation, load up dots, and just spam Star Surges. When fighting Resto Druids, I really like swapping to them, so I will actually type that in the starting room to my partner, is I want to swap to the healer in stuns. This is very effective against Resto Druids. If you don't do it, you're going to have a much harder time. We are playing on the Cage of Carnage, so Wild Charge and Typhoon are much more effective on this map. If you utilize these ramps towards the center, you can Wild Charge over the gap, and then you can Typhoon the melee back down into the bottom. Whenever your healer's in crowd control, you can see that I'm kiting in bear form using Mass Entanglement on the melee attackers. We're not going to need Mass Entanglement for the healer because they're a Resto Druid and they can just shapeshift out of those types of solar beams. So Mass Entanglement in this situation becomes exclusively about rooting the melee DPS during their damage cooldowns or when your healer is in crowd control. So for example, right here, our healer is in a Hammer of Justice. We're trying to maintain regrowth on ourselves as well throughout this, and you will notice that you periodically get an instant cast regrowth. That's from casting a certain amount of Star Surges. So you want to be paying attention to when your regrowth starts glowing. I might honestly add it to the cooldown manager to track it here, where you can see where my Alchemy Frenzy stacks are, just so I can see it, because it's very vital to keep regrowth up. I try to go for a cast there with Wild Growth leading into regrowth, but we can just use the instant one and be okay. And you can see how I'm positioning my back towards this ramp. So we use Typhoon to bait them to use mobility. If we're stunned, Barkskin is obviously a good idea to use. They have Avatar and Avenging Wrath, and where I'm tracking that is on their health bar above their heads, which you can't see right now, but the Avenging Wrath icon here appears on the left of the Paladin and Avatar appears left on the Warrior. So two major damage enhancing effects from both players, and I'm stunned. That's just really good value to be able to use your Barkskin. You can also jump down into this gap and then use Travel Form Wild Charge to jump back up to the top side of it. I do that. Right now I'm just pulling the Warrior down away from the Druid, trying to expose the Druid in the open for Hammer of Justice and for Sleepwalk. Because we were playing with a Preservation Evoker, I don't need to focus so heavily on getting Cyclones on the healer as I'm getting it if I'm getting attacked. If I'm not getting attacked, then I do need to focus heavily on getting Cyclones on the enemy healer. But if we're not in this instance, our healer is able to more freely get crowd control. I can focus on just retreating, kiting, pulling them into a bad spot, and focusing on my damage output. So right here, they get a Sleepwalk on the Resto Druid. We are pinned in a Spear of Bastion, but our healer isn't in crowd control until just right now. So when this happens, Bear Form Frenzied Regeneration. So you just look and see, okay, healer's in crowd control on the raid frame, which I have a UI video. If you'd like my UI, I use no add-ons. If you just want something that's just right out of the box, I'll have a link to that UI video at the end of this one. But you're just paying attention defensively to this area of the screen for your healer, because that means that they can't heal you if an icon appears in this bottom left, which means you want to be using Bear Form, you want to be using Barkskin. So here we're stunned. We can see Avenging Wrath from the ret, and we were low health. This is a good time to use Barkskin, and we're holding them out of line of sight of the Druid on the bottom, so the Druid has to come to the top of the ramp, which exposes them here for Sleepwalk. It also exposes them to be able to get hit by Hammer of Justice or stuns from the Evoker. So here we see a triple stun, and we're kind of just rotating between Incarnation and Eclipse to maximize their damage. Here's that Wild Charge up to the top side, and then we jump off the bottom to the other side. We're able to get a little bit of a gap. We can root the Warrior on the bottom of this side away from the Ret Paladin's freedom. Typically, Ret Paladins also, if you root them, they're more prone to use freedom because they realize they're rooted. But if you can manage to root their ally melee and not the ret, sometimes they just don't notice and they let the ally sit in the root. So like right here, the Ret Paladin uses a root just because they were probably personally crowd controlled as opposed to the Warrior. So sometimes separating or using an instant cast individual root on the opposing melee that isn't the ret can be really good. And you can see why this strategy is effective. We're just doing a lot of overall damage, and we've ran the Resto Druid out of mana. So we're either going to win in these Hammer of Justice Sleepwalk windows, or we can win by running them out of mana by just limiting the uptime of the melee so that they can't do as much damage. I go for a Bash Solar Beam on the ret to try and stop him from using his wall here towards the end. I really wanted to catch him off guard and burst him down to try and force a bubble. But still, my main focus is just defense, just running away. Even though they're at like 30% health, and it's like you might get overexcited in these positions as a Balanced Druid, druid, your finishing power is not the best. So I think focusing defense is generally for the best. And I can see this druid is casting wrath, so we're going to swap to him. We've been doing this throughout the match whenever we can. Jump over the gap, continue to maintain kiting. They use lay on hands to recover. We're still kind of chopping them up. Here I'm caught in a Spirit Bastion. They're very low, so we're going to use Wild Growth, Bear Form Frenzy, and my Paladin lay on hands is, and that's more than enough to be able to finish off the druid. So you have these kind of like little mini games that you're playing simultaneously. One of them is just maintaining dots on everything. The other one is using Incarnation Trent and Star Surge spam, or using regular Eclipse and Star Surge spam rotated in between those two intermittently, while trying to figure out when to Bark Skin, when to go Bear Form. And you see that I pretty much almost never casted Cyclone. I was able to get through that without even needing to do it. I could just kite them, and I'm playing a PvP talent that lets me run even faster when I shapeshift, which for some reason I'm spacing out on the name of the talent right now for the PvP talents, but it gives you a lot of mobility to kite warriors and limit their uptime, as opposed to just standing on top of them and dealing with interrupts. So I find this to be a bit more stress-free way of dealing with melee attackers. It doesn't work against all melee. There are some that it will not be as effective. It's very effective against warriors, windwalkers, rogues, rets to some degree, but not as effective against feral druids, Death Knights, especially on Holy, mostly because most of their abilities are ranged. So it only works against the melee that are like kind of gridlocked into melee hitting you with this spam travel form build. The other melee you got to play a bit differently. You got to be faking kicks a little bit more, but we're just playing out in the open towards this pillar to try and bait them in behind and away from their evoker, so we can drag their evoker in. And you can see that if my healer is not getting attacked, they can cyclone. They also have nature swiftness cyclone, so I can just focus on offense. So you also want to pay attention to the healer type that you're playing with, right? Usually it's whoever's not getting attacked, their job is to play offense and get crowd control on the enemy healer. Whoever is getting attacked's job is to survive and position the enemy team in a way that it's easier to crowd control the enemy healer. So while I'm the target right now, that's my main goal, is just drag the melee across the map. And look at it, we pull the evoker out in the open. It's much easier to stun the evoker. I can stun the ret to prevent sanctuary and prevent him from healing. He knocks the ret off the side. We're able to get some burst damage rolling through. I knock the ret again into the corner, trying to just separate the melee from each other. Wild charge away. I get sleepwalked mid-air, which is a little unfortunate. I decided to trinket this one because it looked like they were kind of going after my healer, and they've realized that tunneling me was not going to work. They're swapping, and this is where you've got to be adaptable as a balanced druid. Is you can see now I'm going for cyclones. As soon you got to recognize, like, okay, I'm not getting attacked anymore. Rotate from defense mode to offense mode and get cyclones, and then look, oh, now I'm getting attacked again. Consider what mode I need to be in. Is it offense pushing on the healer, or is it defense retreating and pulling them away from the enemy healer? It's kind of a mix of both. I'm not too worried about a ret by themselves attacking me, but warrior and a ret, a bit scarier. So now I see the evoker in a hodge, so I want to pull them really far away because evokers have limited range to heal. So if I can bait them to chase me much further away and get some distance to get some defensive cyclones against ret, usually you want to clone the wings here, or you want to be cloning when your healer is in crowd control. And if you're unable to do either of those, Bear Form Frenzy Regeneration. Or Heart of the Wild when you're not in a shapeshift form. It will cast Wild Growth, and Wild Growth is a very big heal right now, while trying to pay attention to your instant regrowths, which we just got one right now, and we're going to apply that, and then we get stunned, but the instant regrowth will increase the healing we receive. Gives us a little purge protection, which isn't really too big of a deal in this matchup, but the purge protection can be nice, along with the Moonkin aura to help out with the rest of Druid Hots. I use Solar Beam here on the Evoker, but you can see they have a tool called Rescue, which enables them to pull an ally and escape from it. It's not actually very effective, I think, generally in this matchup. It can be tough to Solar Beam in an Evoker, mostly because they can go immune to interrupts so frequently with Obsidian Scales. But they have a window when they use Tip the Scales Fire Breath where they'll start spamming Chrono Flames. I think that window is particularly good to Solar Beam them on Chrono Flames, so they don't benefit from that haste they get, so they don't get a whole bunch of them because it does a lot of damage when they do it. I think he's going to do it right here in a moment because he just used Obsidian Scales. You just see him start spamming Chrono Flame, basically. I think interrupting during that window is good just because it's easier to actually do it because they're just spam casting. The charged ability is actually very hard to interrupt in general, whereas Chrono Flame is a bit easier. And then obviously Sleepwalk. So like right here, the Evoker pushing in for Sleepwalk. If I had a Solar Beam, I think interrupting during that window wouldn't have been too bad. We're still using our instant regrowth here, anticipating before the stun lands. We do cast Cyclone and get interrupted. It's not a big deal. We can just Star Surge spam throughout that with the remainder of our Eclipse. We're getting stunned though, and our Rest of Druid is running a bit low on mana, so I do kind of shift gears here and try and get a few more Cyclones to try and turn this around. And so I said, by switching between offense and defense mode, we Wild Growth because our whole team is dying. You got to remember to cancel Moonkin form, then Wild Growth, then Bear, then Frenzy, and that's going to give you kind of like your emergency heal moment for your team to be able to recover. And we're kind of just desperate. We're just sitting in Bear form, trying to get maximum armor, bashing the warrior, and we are just run kitty run mode with sprint to get away from the warrior and limit their uptime. So if this is something like a Death Knight, not a warrior, that probably wouldn't have worked. I probably would have ended up going down. But they're attacking our healers, so we got to switch gears. So I move closer to the enemy healer to be able to cycle him out of the Hammer of Justice. We can lob in the Star Surges towards the Ret Paladin. I see our Resto Druid in a stun, but it looks like it was removed with Sanctuary or a Trinket, but was still clone the Ret Paladin low health to prevent the Evoker from recovering as the Evoker comes out of crowd control. Swap damage to the warrior, and we're just trying to rotate cyclones around. We go for Root Solar Beam. He can rescue it, he can freedom it, but I'm really just trying to buy like even a global of damage and healing prevention from the Evoker here because the Ret is so low, and we've managed to survive. We get Stormbalded. Barkskin comes up really soon. We got an instant regrowth, so we want to make sure we get this instant regrowth up and Barkskin as soon as possible so the healing is amplified. Pull them down out into the open so they have no choice but to fight for the final few moments. Down here, we can Bearform Frenzied Regeneration and root and run and pray to God that our Ret Paladin is able to finish them, and ultimately they were able to. So it's still kind of sketchy, still kind of tough to pull off, but definitely achievable nonetheless. And Balance Druid, like I said, is a lot more fun than it was in previous seasons. It's still very similar playstyle though. It's just maintain dots, rotate between the Trent, Incarn, Star Surge spam, and then the Eclipse Star Surge spam. Focus on your defense during that time by paying attention to the raid frames, seeing if your healer's in crowd control, or looking at the health bars above their player characters to see if a damage enhancement cooldown has been active to decide whether you should Barkskin, Bearform, Stampede, Sprint, and try and retreat from them. And then paying attention to whether you're in offense mode or defense mode, depending on if you're getting attacked or if your teammates are getting attacked, and being able to shift gears between those two different modes. If you get all of this stuff simultaneously, you're going to be playing in a rank 1 level in no time. So I do hope that you guys enjoyed this breakdown in today's video. Thank you guys very much for tuning in as always and supporting me over these years. I do hope that my videos have at least helped somebody out there. So thank you guys once again, and I will see you in the next one.